With 2 seconds on the clock, having to go full length of the court, again, rarely happens. She sets a pick that frees Diana, that gives her a wide open 50-footer. Now that's usually not a money shot, but for Diana it was.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Outlet Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Smith, and today our guest is the Phoenix Mercury General Manager and Phoenix Suns Executive Vice President and CFO, Jim Pittman. Jim, thank you for hanging out with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Lindsay. Good to be here today.
Cool. Well, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about during this show, and one of the biggest things is obviously the Phoenix Mercury. They just took off to Florida to be a part of the bubble for the season, if you will. But before we get into that, let's go all the way back to the start of this wild and different season and talk about the off season. One of the biggest acquisitions was Skylar Diggins-Smith. So tell me about how that all unfolded and what she brings.
So as we were evaluating our team after last season, we really felt that we needed a really strong guard, point guard in particular, who could really help with what we do with Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi as we move forward. And Skylar Diggins was the absolute number one priority on our list. And so as we were evaluating how to go about that, she happened to be playing in a USA basketball game, or a exhibition game in Connecticut with Diana Taurasi. And so we were like, well, let's, and it happened to coincide with the first day of free agency. And so Sandy and I decided that we were going to go out and watch that game and then try to meet with Skylar, if she would, to try to get her to become a member of our Mercury family. And we recruited Diana to help us along the way, and we were fortunate enough to, on the very first morning of free agency, to line up a time to meet with Skylar. But Skylar didn't want to just meet in the hotel. She didn't want anybody knowing what was going on. So her representatives got us a room in a hotel about 6 blocks away. We met over there kind of clandestinely that morning and had a really great conversation, probably about 45 minutes. And then I turned it over to Dee, and she closed. And she's not only the greatest closer of all time on the court, she's pretty good at it off the court too. And we made our best pitch, and within 48 hours, Skylar was a member of the Phoenix Mercury. So it worked out really, really well.
What were those emotions like? Because 48 hours is not a long time, but we know these things move pretty quickly. So what was the range of emotions like within that? Yeah,
we felt really good after we left, because we had given it our best shot. We had put together the whole PowerPoint presentation. We had the greatest player of all time, who happened to be one of Skylar's people that she looked up to as she was coming up through the ranks, and Diana. She knew Brittany Griner because they were 2 of the 3 to see coming out of the 2013 college season. And it felt really good for us as we left. But like you said, it's never over until it's over. So it was a couple of sleepless nights, but when we got that call a couple of days later, it was pretty euphoric that we had put together what we think is the big 3 now in the WNBA.
Yeah, and it was really fun. We were able to welcome her to the Valley, hosted her and DT and BG at a Suns game before the shutdown. Correct. And then the shutdown happened, and you guys had to navigate the draft through that, which became the first virtual draft. What was that like?
We did. And as a matter of fact, that weekend that Skylar came in to kind of work out with Dee during the off season before the coronavirus pandemic had really started, I was up at the Pac-12 tournament in Las Vegas, and I flew back that Sunday morning, got to see Skylar and Dee that Sunday at the Suns-Bucks game where they were there together. And we were planning on going to the Big 12 tournament the next weekend, and then the NCAA tournament. And that's generally when we do most of our in-person scouting, is during the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament, because in women's college basketball in particular, the best teams typically don't play each other until those conference tournaments, or not regularly, or during the NCAA tournament. And so we really wanted to evaluate the players when they're playing against the better competition. Well, those games got canceled. So it really did change our focus for how we went about scouting for the draft. We had to really rely on video scouting and on conversations as opposed to really getting to see them in person, how they communicate with their teammates, how they react on the bench, all those little intangibles that go into figuring out what the right fit is for our team. For us, we're always looking for obviously talented players, but high character, highly competitive players that will fit in with our Mercury family. It made it much more challenging leading into the draft, having to do the draft then at my dining room table as opposed to in our war room. There were just a lot of things that were different, but everybody had the same playing field. So we just knew we had to do more legwork, and as it turned out, I think we had a pretty good draft. Unfortunately, though, the coronavirus kicked in, and it completely shut down everything, including what we were planning to do for training camp for the league. So we never really got to see our players, our draftees. We had 3 players that we were expecting to see in coming out of the draft, and we never saw them. We had to actually cut them before they even stepped foot in Phoenix or on a gym where we could see them in person. So it was very difficult. However, 2 of them have been picked up by other teams as part of the restart, and that's a little gratifying knowing that the players that you selected are actually still going to be playing, albeit not for the Mercury, but will be playing in the WNBA season this year.
So having gone through that virtual draft, what are some tips that maybe you could share with like James Jones about how to approach what might also be a virtual draft come this fall?
Well, it's interesting. James and I did talk a little bit about that. And they're doing on the Sun side a lot of what we did on the Mercury side, as far as a lot of video conferencing, a lot of Zoom calls, getting to know the potential draft picks, or having interviews with people who have played against or coached against the potential draft picks, so that you have an idea of what kind of person you're looking at, what their skills are. On the Sun side, they do a lot more in-person scouting than we would on the Mercury side anyway, but it is still a challenge not having seen those players in the conditions of an NCAA tournament where it's do or die, win or go home type of situation. So, I would tell him, do your homework, do your due diligence. I know they're already doing that, so I don't have to say that.
Of course. All right, so this past Monday, the Mercury headed off to Florida to prepare for this upcoming season. How did you guys go about preparing behind the scenes and leading up to that send-off for them?
Well, it's been a really challenging summer because for the longest time we had no place for any type of workout. Workouts weren't allowed, and just in the last, say, 4 weeks or so were we allowed to do one-on-one workouts, which we did over at the Coliseum. And we'd spent a lot of time at the Coliseum getting it ready for what we thought was going to be the Mercury season this year. So we were fortunate that the locker rooms and the court and all that were ready to go for us, but only being able to do one-on-one, one player, one coach, socially distanced type of workouts is not great. But it's at least something, which was more than we were able to do prior to that point being reached. So our players have been doing one-on-one workouts for the last, like I said, 4 weeks, but it's not the same, and it'll be interesting to see how things come together. We did fly out on Monday, staff and players. We're currently in quarantine right now at IMG Academy in Bradenton, which is a really fine facility. I think that the players, as we were looking at it from a league perspective, we wanted a facility that player health and safety was at the forefront. Player experience would be close second. We think we have that in IMG Academy. It's a really good facility, but they're in quarantine now for the next few days, and then starting on Friday we'll have our first day of real training camp. So, it's coming very quickly now. It's going to be here before we know it, and then within just a couple of weeks after that, we're going to be playing regular season games. So, we're really excited. We're optimistic, but it's a lot right now.
I cannot imagine being quarantined in a hotel or a villa or somewhere other than my home for that amount of time. What do you think that some of the players brought to keep themselves busy during this quarantine time?
That's a really good question. I'm sure they all have Netflix subscriptions, so I'm sure if they haven't watched everything on Netflix at this point, they're probably doing that. I'm sure there are some gamers there who have brought their Xboxes, but they've come so far at this point that 3 more days. I think now the feeling is that we're there, and we're there. We're going to play. We're excited about playing, and we can do this for 3 more days because the light is right there at the end of the tunnel.
Right, you can see that light now. So what are your expectations for this season?
My expectations are actually pretty high. I really like our team. I think that the group that we have, like I said, talented, high character, super competitive, I think fits into what's happening on campus at IMG really well. It's going to take some discipline. It's going to take camaraderie and family feeling, and I think that our pieces fit. From what I've seen in the individual workouts, I feel like the pieces fit really well. We have 3 bona fide superstars in Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner, and Skylar Diggins-Smith. We have great role players. We have young talent, our 3 draft picks from last year that are all back in Brianna Turner, Alana Smith, and Sophie Cunningham. I feel really good about the mix of older, younger players in their prime. So I'm optimistic.
We would all be super excited to bring home another championship, especially in this fashion because it's so unique. And I know a lot of players on the NBA side have been talking about how the asterisk next to the championship of this season shouldn't be a lesser kind of asterisk, but a greater asterisk in the sense that it's going to be even harder to win in this type of a situation. And same thing on the W side.
Couldn't agree more. While it's a shortened season for the WNBA, the obstacles that have to be overcome to win a title in this time are immense, and so to me it's an asterisk that you actually overachieved. I think back to the 1999 NBA season when it was lockout shortened and there's only 66 games, and the Spurs won. Their banner is exactly the same size as what it was when they won their other 3 titles. So no one will remember that it's a shortened season. What people will remember is that this was a season that, full of obstacles, and to persevere and win a title in this type of environment is something to really be proud of.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to seeing how this season unfolds for the Mercs. So one of the things that I do want to ask you about are some stories, because you have been a part of this organization for a really long time, and you have gotten to be around one of the greatest players in history for a long time as well, in Diana Taurasi. What are some of your favorite Diana stories?
Well, there's a lot of stories. I mean, she's had some incredible games for us. I think back to the game in, I think it was 2006, a triple overtime game against Houston, when she had 47 points, going for 50 in the 3rd overtime. She drives, makes a layup, gets fouled, and gets called for a charge. We end up winning the game in triple overtime by 1 point, but she should have had a 50-point game that night. Incredible performance, maybe one of the best performances by an individual player that I've ever seen. I think to the 2014 playoffs. We're in Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals against Minnesota. It's a close game coming down at the end of the 3rd quarter. There's a couple of seconds left in the quarter. We got the ball at the far end. Most times players will dribble that out, not even try to make a shot. Misty Bass decided that she was going to go and set a pick four with 2 seconds on the clock, having to go full length of the court. again, rarely happens. She sets a pick that frees Diana, that gives her a wide open 50-footer. Now that's usually not a money shot, but for Diana it was. It changes the entire complexion of that game. We move on. The numerous games where we were in a lose and go home situation or win and move on that she won for us. She's only lost one of those games in her entire career. In my mind, the greatest basketball player in women's basketball history, and she is the definition of the GOAT. Winning the title in 2014 in Chicago with Brittany Griner out because she had suffered a torn retina. Eva Coburn, who was little used at the time, comes in, starts, plays a great game for us. Really hadn't had a lot of minutes all season, but stepped up. It was just a great moment for her and for our franchise. And of course, Diana made the shot to win the game. I think back then through numerous years where we've had the incredible offensive firepower. 2007 and 2009, where we won the title with, again, behind Diana Taurasi and Cappy Pondexter. We've had some great individual players here, but great teams. Always looking for that right chemistry. It's not always easy to find, and sometimes when you get it, you can't let it go. If you do, it's hard to get back. We've just been really fortunate through the years to see some of the greatest players in WNBA history play here in Phoenix.
MustStopBullying.org is a hub for us to educate ourselves all about bullying. It'll teach us what bullying is, how to know if our children are becoming victims of bullying, what parents can do to help, and give information on how to talk to kids about bullying. So for all of the resources, just head on over to MustStopBullying.org, because together we can make a difference in our communities. One of my favorite things about the WNBA is that these women are so empowered to use their voices. They're not afraid to use their voices and stand up for what they believe. And we are obviously in a very challenging time in our society right now, and those voices have continued to shine and continued to speak out. How have you seen the Phoenix Mercury players throughout the years use their voices to make change in this world?
I think we've obviously always encouraged them. The WNBA has always encouraged our players to use their voice, and I think that's really important for sports figures to do that. They have a great stage to be able to amplify what their cause is, whether that's voting with Skylar Diggins-Smith, whether that's police brutality and Breonna Turner, and her parents are police officers, and she's seen it firsthand as a black woman growing up in a home with two police officers, and then watching it on TV. And I think what she's done here over the last couple of months has just been incredible for the movement, and for her in particular. Brittany Griner and what she does in the community for the homeless, and her shoe drive every year, and her ability to then go and actually deliver the shoes herself on the streets, something that she's very passionate about. We have great people in our organization. Our players are really good human beings, and that's really makes me proud to be part of the Mercury family as I look back at what our players have done through the years.
How do you think that players like BG, like Breonna and Skylar and Diana have inspired athletes maybe on the NBA side or in different sports to start using their voices more? Because I feel like the W has been a leader in this space for a really long time. This is nothing new for these women. How do you think they might have inspired people to start actually speaking out a little bit more?
I agree. I think that the players in the WNBA have been leaders in these causes, and I think the NBA players have seen the results that the WNBA players are getting, and now we're seeing more NBA players stepping up and being champions for their causes. And I think that's how change actually happens, and I'm really proud to know that the WNBA players were the leaders in that.
What are some of the ways that the W and the Phoenix Mercury will continue this conversation forward throughout the season while they're actually playing?
Well, the WNBA has just rolled out a Justice Matters program just in the last day or so, and this season will really be dedicated to amplifying the voices of our players, all players in the WNBA. You'll see Black Lives Matter on the courts. You'll see shooting shirts with Black Lives Matter and Say Her Name on the players. It's something that's really important to what we're trying to accomplish as a league and for the players in general. And I'm really happy to be a part of this.
I love, that's one of my favorite parts about the W. I mean, the play is exceptional, but what they do away from the court, utilizing their platforms, makes it even bigger for me personally. It's one of my favorite parts about the W for sure. And I think, especially with the Mercury, we have such strong, outspoken, and unafraid voices coming out of our players, and they're just so inspiring, especially being a woman in sports. I feel like they're so inspiring on so many different levels, whether you're a little girl watching or a woman working in sports, continuing to push for those changes and improvements.
I agree completely. Having traveled with our players through airports, and the WNBA flies commercial. We don't fly charter like the NBA does. So there are many nights, many days where we're in airports waiting for planes, waiting to catch the next flight. And young girls will come up to Brittany Griner, will come up to Diana Taurasi, want a picture, want an autograph, just want to say hi. And I have never seen them ever turn one away. Something that's really special, I think, about our players in the WNBA and in the Phoenix Mercury in particular is I've never one time felt that someone didn't get the picture or the autograph or just the brief conversation that can make someone's life, and our people, our players have been the best at that.
You have the power to help stop bullying. Bullying will not stop unless we all stop looking the other way and get involved. Now, you don't have to be a superhero, but just doing something, anything, can go a long way to help end bullying. For more tips and resources on how you can make a change, head to muststopbullying.org. Jim, we've talked a lot about the Phoenix Mercury, but you are also very much so involved with the Phoenix Suns, and you, again, have been a part of that organization for quite a while. So let's go into some
Keep saying that. You make it sound like I'm old.
No, of course
well,
not.
I am old, so.
You're a resident historian. You know all the stories. You've got all the scoops on the things that we want to know about.
So I've actually been with the organization almost 29 years. I started when we were still playing at the Coliseum. The America West Arena was being built. I came in here on opening day of the new building in 1992, and shortly thereafter, Charles Barkley was signed. A huge point in the franchise's history. I still remember that press conference in our little atrium area outside where the team shop is right now. Massive numbers of people there. The media was incredible that day. What a great season that 92-93 year was. I can still picture many of the shots. The one that sticks in my mind most, though, is John Paxson, which is not a good way to finish the season, but I can vividly remember where I was sitting when that shot went in. But it still didn't diminish the year. The parade that happened afterwards, and depending on who was counting, 100,000, 300,000 people at the parade for a team that didn't win a title. I mean, it was 110 degrees outside. It's just an incredible experience. Moving forward to the next era with Jason Kidd and Rex Chapman was there, and Antonio McDyess. And I remember one of my favorite stories was the recruitment of Antonio McDyess. We were trying to get him to return to Phoenix, and he had talked about going to Denver, and we'd had sent clandestinely Rex Chapman up to try to get him, and I'm sure Rex talked about this on his podcast. And I'm sitting actually at a restaurant here downtown with Brian Colangelo and Tom Gugliotta, who we were also trying to get at the same time, while Rex is in Denver at a Nuggets game, or it may have even been a hockey game that they were watching, and getting updates from Rex as he's trying to break into the arena, trying to get down into the locker room where they've quarantined McDyess at the time. It was just an incredible experience. He ended up signing with Denver, and we ended up signing Tom Gugliotta the next day. So it ended up working out for us, but it was just an incredible experience. From there, you move into the Steve Nash era with Amari Stoudemire and Sean Marion. What a great run that was. I remember when we drafted Steve Nash. Back in the day, we didn't have the basketball operations staff that we do now. So the CFO was also the capologist and the assistant general manager, for lack of a better term. So I did a lot of the contract work for all the players coming in, and I helped in the draft. And I remember that night drafting Steve Nash, and I was, hey, he's a nice player. I, see how he plays in our league. And then I got to actually work out with him a little bit in that summer, playing some horse games and whatnot, which was a great, incredible experience.
Did you win? I think I know the answer.
I lost 3-2.
Okay, well, that's not too bad.
The only time that I lost to a player was to Steve Nash.
No, really? That's the
Yes.
first time and the only time?
Yes.
Is that the only time and the first time you played a player?
No. I played a lot of the players in horse. I couldn't do a lot of the trick shots that they could do, but if it was just a shooting game, I was okay.
Oh, that's so fun. I mean, okay, so we got to give a little backstory here on this one with your shooting abilities, because I've seen so many times you come down and nail 3 half-court shots in a row.
Yeah, so...
Where did this come from?
I grew up in a little town in Illinois, and basketball was a big thing in Illinois, in where I was, and so I played basketball every day, and I was a good shooter. I wasn't very big, I wasn't particularly quick, but I could shoot, and so that was my skill that got me through a lot of times, and I carried that over for a lot. I can still go out and shoot a little bit right now, but not like I used to be able to. But I could handle myself in shooting games. So
that's great. Okay, continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So seeing Steve drafted and then trading him, I was part of that trade. Getting him back, having this incredible run, and then I traded Steve again. So I'm the only person in the history of the league to trade Steve Nash twice. I did the trade calls twice for that. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's something that I did. So, but what another incredible person to have in your organization. He was, in my mind, the true pure point guard, and clearly one of the top 2 or 3 players ever to wear a Phoenix Suns jersey. And now we're into the Devin Booker era, and I can't wait to see what happens here over the next few weeks in Orlando and moving forward. But another terrific young man who's put his money where his mouth is as far as being a part of the community, donating what he's donated to Phoenix Suns charities, and really helping those less fortunate. And those high character people is what our organization's always been about.
Jim, I know we joked a little bit earlier about how long you've been with the organization, but I can honestly say that I hope someday I get to say that I've been a part of this organization for as long as you, and can have all of those stories and memories and just see all the different athletes that come through and how they affect both basketball and our community here in Phoenix. So again, thank you for sharing those stories with us. Thank you for spending some time with us today. It's been really fun catching up.
Thanks, it's been my pleasure. Thanks, Lindsay.